Hey guys, what's going on? You are listening to ThisWeekInGeek.net. I'm your host, Mike the Birdman, and well, it's not April Fool's Day. Thank God for that. I'm joined by my compatriot who also dislikes that holiday.
Alex, the producer, and as a kid, I think it was April Fool's. But as anybody who's trying to follow the news, and I mean, I don't purport us to be like we're not CBC, we're not we're not the accredited news organization, but it's no longer, and it hasn't been since like at least 10 years. It's no longer funny, ha ha, with a lot of the news that comes out. A lot of them are either mean spirited or
Stupid. Frankly, stupid.
and it's only going to get worse as bots start writing everything for AI,
Yeah.
where it becomes indistinguishable. And I'm worried that that's the path that April Fool's is going. Is that it's only going to take a few people to start using AI to make their April Fool's stuff so believable that it becomes problematic.
Yeah, like it's just one of those holidays. I've never been a fan. Honestly, I think we'll probably talk about this. We're definitely going to talk about this in our
Yes.
weird news segment about some of the more interesting ones we saw this year. But I'm just thank God the show's not coming out on April Fool's
Yeah,
Day.
the only April Fools I would do, and it's not even really April Fools, would be I still thought it would be funny to have our landing page made for our website where it makes the interface, at least at first glance, look like the first or second version of Twig. Probably the first version where it looked like just it looked like a Word document. That would be kind of funny for a day, but it's like, really? Like it would be more fun to do that on an anniversary.
Yeah. So anyway, guys, we often talk about our weeks that have been for us and what we've kind of been up to this week. This week, the Guelph Storm went into the first round of the playoffs. We've unfortunately dropped the first two games, which is unfortunate. We're playing the Sarnia Sting, although some good news did come out of that. So I went to Woodlawn Bowl, which is a local bowling alley here, as I talked about this last week, where I got to play Halo Fireteam Raven and actually get inside that arcade game for the first time. This time I actually went down to the bowling alley a little bit early before the game started to go have dinner, which I know sounds weird, but they actually have amazing chicken wings. But I went into an axe throwing game where you actually throw physical axes. And you can score points and win tickets for prizes and everything. And I went down and I posted the pictures up on social media, and I don't think I did too bad for a first time axe thrower.
Well,
And
especially from a seated position.
oh yeah, to get in there, I have to get in there, position my chair, and I can't exactly pivot perfect on. I have to turn my body slightly to the side. So it was a bit of a challenge, but I was hucking bullseyes pretty consistently, and that's a lot of fun. So I talked to my friend Liam, who you might remember from our Stargate show. They're talking about maybe bringing me out to a proper axe throwing range that we have here in town, which is fairly accessible from what they remember. And they're going to teach me how to throw other types of axes, how to throw knives. I'm not a terrible shot with a knife, but only a very specific type. So if I can broaden those skills, because why the hell not, I guess, that'll be kind of fun. Plus, this afternoon I went out with my wife and we played a bunch of Pokemon. And I actually, just before this recording, I got in the door from going through the first time through Riverside Park, which is a park that's pretty close to my house. And I got a chance to drive around, see all the new things that have kind of been done over the last couple of weeks. And it was a very pleasant drive, a very cold way home, because we're recording the show at about like 7 at night. And when that sun goes down, holy crap.
Well, it was warm. It's been warm like the last few days, but it was rainy. So when it gets to like, there's a big difference between 6 degrees and sunny and 6 degrees and heavy like water in the air. Like just even that like dampness, it'll go right to your bones. It's worse than if it's like -10 but like no snow.
Yeah, like and especially when that wind hits you, it is just like, ugh, brr. But yeah, so I'm glad that I'm home inside and warm. But yeah, it's been a tremendously couple of interesting days here weather-wise in Guelph, because like you mentioned, the weather's been kind of warm and wet. And then I was just going to bed the other night on Friday night. I'm just sitting there reading some of my comic books, and we had a thunderstorm. Okay, not in itself weird, but it was so loud, Alex. I thought there was an accident outside.
Dude, I was afraid that my old building was falling apart
It was so loud. I couldn't
at
believe how loud it
at
was.
about 2 a.m. I don't know what time it hit you guys, but about 2
About
a.m.
one, yeah.
I was still up watching a little TV, and I was like, and then I thought my headphones, like something was wrong with the show I was watching, because I heard some rumbling. I'm like, oh, that's weird. I took my headphones off, and it was as loud of a crack as like when I used to go to my grandparents' cottage and it would hit the lake.
Yeah, like this
Like,
was really loud.
It shook the windows.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
like,
same
whoa, dude. And these are storm windows.
here. Yeah, like it was pretty intense. Now, obviously, when we mentioned Friday, when this happened to us here, there was a fairly significant storm system that went through multiple states in the US. So, any of our TWIG listeners that are out there that are in the affected areas, I really hope you're okay.
But climate change doesn't exist, right?
Of course not, right? But yeah, like I saw some videos on Twitter that showed some of the storm chaser stuff. Wow, like some
Yeah.
utterly astounding video. But other than that, just my week has been fairly good. I'm just beginning to wrap up college, and might be some big academic decisions for me coming up in the next year or so. I have a meeting with the University of Guelph coming up on Thursday, and I'm getting an accessibility tour.
So the meeting is the meeting to say whether you're dumb or smart.
Yeah, pretty much.
SMRT. Basically, how dumb or smart are you?
Yeah, it's gonna be pretty cool. I actually went to the campus last week to do a little bit of exploring, and I'm going back on Thursday to do an accessibility meeting, but also to meet with some people for some potential further academic upgrading.
That's one thing. Yeah, but that's one thing too. Like, regardless of whether or not you actually go to school there, like you did, like universities and colleges in this province have all been pretty good with making their facilities accessible for years. I know that Guelph, wasn't it one of the first schools, one of the first universities made wheelchair accessible?
For the most part, it is.
I remember hearing something about that. Like, it was one of the first schools to be adapted for that. I know that all of our community colleges, which for any American listeners, that's the equivalent of, I don't know, like a hybrid. I guess it's like like our community colleges are like better than somewhere between a community college / trade school and a state university. It's somewhere in between that in education, right? They were all basically adapted in like the 70s and 80s to be pretty accessible for the most part. So like that's one thing about academia is they were always sort of ahead of the curve on that. So I'm assuming your tour will go pretty smoothly.
Yeah, like I'm really looking forward to seeing other areas of like student life, what I can expect if I attend college next year. So yeah, it'll be pretty cool. I don't want to say too much more what I'm going to be taking, but let's just say if you've been following me for the last couple of years and what I've been doing on the advocacy side, it should be pretty clear where I'm going to be headed. So
yeah,
other than that,
double degree, advanced calculus and physics.
Oh, clearly, I'm going to be a chemical engineer. So beyond that, Alex, what have you been up to?
You're supposed to say I'm supposed to be a lemical engicanophodal. You make up a word for it. You're studying the linguistics of math. No, what's been up with me? Well, this week, the vast majority of it was taken up with visiting and doing grandma daycare, basically helping to make sure that she had all the help that she needed while my mom took a break. Because she's, the Alzheimer's dementia is getting pretty rough to the point where for a day or so, she kept thinking that my grandmother on the other side of the family was my mother. And then for a bit, she thought that my brother's mother-in-law was my mother, even though my mother is her daughter. You know what I mean? Like, there were very confusing days, and then she was fine, and then the confusing. So that gives you a brief window into it. So it's like there's got to be somebody with her, and we're taking her around to look at different long-term care places because, it's going to progress. So, it was being good grandson week for the most part. That's why I told you guys ahead of time. I was like, hey, I'll be around if you want to chat or do something, but I won't be around to record for a few days. And then during that time period, I did take my mom for a belated birthday thing retreat to go see John Wick 4, which is funny because she's not into like a lot of gory movies or even a ton of action movies, but she loved John Wick 1, 2, and 3. I took her to see, she didn't want to see the first one initially because she's like, I don't want to see a Keanu Reeves action movie. And then she saw it on like Netflix or something. And she's like, I want to go see John Wick 2 when it was coming out. So I took her to see that. Then I took her to see the third one. She loved this fourth one. And then outside of that, when I got back on Thursday, Friday, it was mostly catching up on review stuff. But then Friday and Saturday for me was mostly taken up with playing Persona 4 Golden, doing a full playthrough, fast forwarding through a lot of the dialogue scenes because I already knew them, just to get that feel for it, because it's been about 10 years since I played it, and I played it on PS4 this time. So that sort of catches up where I am now. I'm using up a bunch of my free passes that I've got to see movies. Being treated out next week to go see Mario with my brother, but I'm also going to see the D&D movie and see a few more things. While I can schedule like as many trips as I want, because I found out I've got, how like there's the membership passes for like Cineplex and Landmark, or you pay like $10 a month and you get a ticket. Well, there were so many months where I didn't go during the pandemic that I still have, I think, 4 free tickets for the one theater and 5 or 6 for the other, plus like I think $10 or $20 in Atom Cash on the Atom app. So like I've got like the next dozen movies paid for already.
Oh wow, that's like a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, so it's like now that the weather's getting better, travel's more available, no more restrictions. That I mean, there hasn't really been a ton since like I guess things really opened up in like October of last year again fully, but the weather and crap had been so shitty this winter that I just didn't go. So
yeah, I the last movie I saw was I was gonna go see Scream, and then I got really sick, and Ant-Man I think was the last time I went, so it's been a while.
Yeah, like I saw Ant-Man, and I think that was the only movie I saw in theaters the last like 4 months. So those things had all been building up, and then after Ant-Man, now it's John Wick and all this, and I'm gonna see. I've got my tickets to go see Fast and Furious 10 in May, and I guess Guardians is going to have tickets go on sale soon. So I'm just basically going to pre-order my tickets, and if for some reason I can't go to one of them, I'm going to be like, you know what, it's $10 lost, no big deal. Like I don't have to worry about rescheduling or anything. That's the way I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that I get a chance to go out and see John Wick hopefully soon. I'm going to go see Mario with my friend Liam on Wednesday, and D&D.
It's basically the fastest 3-hour action movie you'll ever see.
Oh wow!
Like it feels like it's 2 hours long, but it's actually 3.
Oh wow! Well, hopefully going to get a chance to go see that soon. I do need to do like a marathon watch through of everything, and then hopefully I'll get around to watching that at some point soon.
It's the best. Like I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's the best one of the quadrilogy.
All right, I'm definitely down. Speaking of things that are definitely down, we have a lot to talk about this week. We're going to talk about a major event that is going to be coming to an end. Is anybody really surprised? A surprise announcement from Netflix, of course, what happened around the world of weird, but because it's April Fool's, we'll primarily be talking about that. Coming up for reviews, we're going to be taking a look at something that I got for review from Hasbro. I'm going to be looking at the Transformers Guardian robot. You may know this also by a different name if you knew the original G1 cartoon. The Guardian robots used to be basically Omega Supreme, so this is sort of a redeco of that, but it's a little bit more than that. I'll talk about that in my review. And Alex, what are we going to be looking at from you?
Well, it depends on the embargoes.
As always, I will find out when I edit the show.
Here's the problem. I was sent over the course of a couple of weeks, probably about 4 or 5 things, each with similar sounding release dates and embargoes. It's just some of them are like a few days off from each other, and I don't, off the top of my head, know which. And it's like I'm prepared to have reviews for every one of them. It's just when maybe a movie or something here. We'll see. There's a bunch of stuff that came in the mail. I can say this. You and I will be talking Star Trek in the near future.
Yes,
as well as some other stuff from Paramount and Mill Creek has come in. I was going to try to have it ready for this week, but it's probably going to be next week. I was sent both a DVD copy and Blu-ray copy of the complete series of Dawson's Creek. So I'm going to have that song stuck in my head for the next year from the episodes I'm going to have to watch.
Delightful. All right, guys. So we have all that and more coming up right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. I've been Mike the Birdman. He's been Alice Producer. We will be back after we journey to the far land of Cybertron. This is my review of the Guardian Robot.
Get your circuits checked, chum. Those guys are the greatest.
I heard that their leaders put together some kind of army and attacked one of the outer cities.
You'd believe anything.
Anyway, what do we care if there's a war? There's Guardian robots to take care of stuff like that. Right now, we got fuel to unload.
Hey guys, this is Mike the Birdman here, and I'm here to talk to you about something extremely special we got from our friends over at Hasbro. I'm here to talk to you about one of the biggest reviews I've probably done on this show in quite some time. I'm talking about the Transformers Generation Selects Titan class Guardian Robot and Lunar Tread. You can find this at HasbroPulse.com, or you can go into your local GameStop and you can get this figure. You just have to ask the guy at the counter. They might have these on the shelf, but believe me, this thing takes up a lot of space. So there's the big hint, guys. Titan class. There's been Scorponok, there's been Trypticon, there's been Metroplex. This is a giant figure. So Guardian Robot is a redeco of the Omega Supreme figure that came out a couple of years ago. And the Guardian Robot in the Transformers lore, these are sort of like the sentinels that would guard kind of Cybertron. They were featured in the original G1 cartoon. They've been featured in multiple iterations of the cartoon in another way. Like they might be friends of Omega Supreme, or they might be drones. Either way, they're sort of like Cybertron's last line of defense. If the Guardian robots are coming, something bad's coming, and they would need to defend against the Decepticons or the Fallen or whatever. They are there as heavy hitters, and that's what these things do. So this figure stands 2 feet tall. I actually posted some pictures on social media next to my really big ragdoll cat Beaker, and in base mode, Beaker is as tall as Guardian Robot. In robot mode, where you got him in his fully formed mode, when I stand Beaker up, he stands as tall as Beaker, if not a little bit taller. So he's a very, very thick boy. This is one of the nicest figures I've ever owned. He's not as tall as Metroplex, which was the first Titans figure, which came out, I want to say back in 2014, and I have owned previously. But the thing that makes Guardian Robot so neat, it's the color deco, and it's just this really nice white and blue and silver, and while it appears really, really simple, it really is just a nice highlight to what a redeco can be, especially when it's adding more to the Transformers lore. Now, to talk about the figure itself, one of the coolest things about this figure is it has extremely heavy-duty ratchet joints. Meaning, you're going to hear this figure when you're clipping him in the base mode, or you're posing his arms, or even with his claw articulation. There's some ratchet joints in there and some friction joints, I want to say. They feel really heavy. They feel extremely sturdy. And because ratchet joints, in my opinion, have a lot more tension and friction, you can do a lot of poses with this guy. Although he is a little bit top heavy, so kind of be aware of that if you're doing anything super dynamic. But again, incredible posability, nice tension. One of the neat things is that his claw is stable enough that you could hold deluxe class figures in his hand, so he's fighting and crushing a Decepticon figure, or maybe you're mounting some of the included blast effects on his claw or on his blaster arm. which they do look really good. And I would say they look better than the blast effects you got included with Omega Supreme from a couple of years back. So, robot mode, incredible. Let's talk about the base mode. I actually had to set up a separate table to set this up because it is so huge. Like, the rocket is like 2 feet tall. And Beaker wouldn't stop, batting at, but that's an aside. So his rocket is essentially his arm, and that's an entirely separate assembly, and it's surprisingly stable because the claw forms the base of the rocket, and you could set that almost entirely flat. And then you would form the base mode is out of his wings, which form the kind of road that goes around. And the road is wide enough to put deluxe scale figures on or Voyager scale figures on in vehicle mode. I had my Orion Pax and my Siege Optimus Prime on it. And then for scale, I think I used Exosuit Spike, Core Class Ratchet, and then the included Lunar Tread, which is a recolor of Countdown from the initial figure. So getting him in the base, it's actually a fairly intuitive transformation, and again, really, really, really simple because of all of those like heavy duty ratchet joints. One of the things that I think some people might forget is that you can fold out these ramps on his legs too, and there is storage included there as well, if I'm remembering correctly. One of the really cool things is the tank mode. So Guardian Robot's chest will form into this tank. And again, the only part that's tricky is folding out the cannon. And it's just remembering to flip it around a certain way when you're transforming it to and back. But once you've done that once or twice, you're never going to forget to do it. Plus, you can store Lunar Tread inside of Guardian Robot if you want to put him in there, but you can also store him inside the rocket and somewhere else if I'm not mistaken. Base mode is incredibly cool, and with the included blast effects, you can make it look like Scorponok or Trypticons attacking, or there's like another blitz on Autobot City. It's cool, incredibly neat. So yeah, the base mode is incredibly cool. It's wonderfully sized and scaled, so you can put tons of core class figures there, or Battle Master scale class. And then, like I said, for vehicle modes for Deluxe and Voyagers, it does work pretty well. It's wide enough for you to put the track down. Like I said, I had not Titan class. I had Deluxe class Orion Pax on there, which is really neat, and it does fit core class figures wonderfully. I kind of wish I brought one of my Deluxe scale Bumblebees, like maybe Nest Bumblebee would have looked really nice, but still, it's an incredibly scaled figure for that. The only part that I found kind of annoying with this is sometimes some of the joints are a little stiff, so you're not likely to break anything, and getting his wings in can be a bit of a trick when you put them on his back, and getting the arms in, I found that get them to clip in, you had to just give them a little bit more force than I was comfortable with, but that could be just on my example of this figure. It also comes with a tiny Battle Master called Lunar Tread, who's a recolor of Countdown, and he's essentially like a lunar dune buggy thing. He's got some arm posability, some leg posability, his little radar dish, and he's got a peg in his chest. So nothing too exciting, but you can store him in the rocket or on the figure, or he can explore the kind of road tread that surrounds the figure. Ultimately, this figure is awesome. It's essentially a play set and a giant base, and you don't see too many big figures like this and aren't a play school toy. So can I recommend Transformers Generations selects Titan class Guardian Robot and Lunar Tread? Yes. If you missed Omega Supreme, this is a really nice re-deco. Like I said, it's just the fact that it stands out so stark compared to Omega Supreme's more G1 inspired colors I think is neat. I mean, I'm sure there's some lunatic out there that is currently army building these things, because these are meant to be mass-produced soldiers of Cybertron. But it's an incredibly detailed figure. It's nice, it's heavy, it sits really well. I put this next to Devastator. He's so big. He's taller than the recently re-released Jetfire. This is the biggest figure that's easily available at retail right now. And if you missed Omega Supreme, and if you want to have that Titan in your collection, Guardian Robot and Lunar Tread is a no-brainer of a buy. Like I said, you can find this at GameStop really easy. You can go to HasbroPulse.com and pick this up. Select third-party retailers, but without reservation. If you're going to invest in a Transformer this year, if you want something big and beefy and thick, then Guardian Robot is there to defend you and the forces of good against evil.
Autobots in danger.
The Prime Minister of Sweden visited Washington today, and my tiny little nipples went to France.
Gossip, rumors, panic in the streets. We're lucky.
This Week in Geek News.
Hey guys, welcome back to ThisWeekInGeek.net. I'm Mike the Birdman. He's Alex, producer. All right, so let's talk about some of the things that happened around the industry this week. We have a fairly big story, but we're going to save that for the last because we do feel it is the most meaty. So we're going to start things off with something that I certainly didn't expect, and that is the Scott Pilgrim vs. the World cast is reunited for a Netflix animated series. Word broke last year that Scott Pilgrim vs. the World was getting an animated series at Netflix based on both the original comic by Brian Lee O'Malley and the 2010 film by Edgar Wright. At the time, no cast members were confirmed. However, earlier today, so last week, Netflix released a teaser video that confirmed almost the entire cast from the film will reprise their role. Although the video doesn't reveal the art style that will be used in the anime, quote, it is interesting enough that the cast is intact. That includes Michael Cera, Scott Pilgrim, Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Ramona Flowers, Ellen Wong as Knives Chow, Kieran Culkin as Wallace Wells, Chris Evans as Lucas Lee, Andra Kendrick as Stacey Pilgrim, Brie Larson as Envy Adams, Mae Whitman as Roxanne Roxy Richter, Allison Pill as Kim Pine, Aubrey Plaza as Julie Powers, Brandon Routh as Todd Ingram, Johnny Simmons as young Neil Nordgraf, and Jason Schwartzman as Gideon Graves. O'Malley created Scott Pilgrim graphic novel series in 2004, and they gradually became a top-selling hit. Unfortunately, the film was a massive bomb at the box office. However, it has gone on to earn a cult following. For the animated series, O'Malley will be the executive producer and writer alongside Ben David Grabinski, the showrunner of Are You Afraid of the Dark? Wright is also attached as an executive producer alongside screenwriter Nira Park, who also co-wrote the film script with him. Netflix and Universal's UCP will produce the series, which has also animated Anime Studios' Science SARU or SARU. Netflix hasn't announced a release date, but given the teaser video, it will likely arrive this year.
Now UCP Pictures is like for their direct to video or direct to streaming division is considered the better. Like, was it Universal? I forget the name of it. The one that did the Munsters movie.
Okay.
Is considered the bad one, where they use a lot of European studios, and it's the tax write-off division. That's not this, for anybody that's worried. UCP is the production company that makes a lot of the stuff for sci-fi, and not like the Asylum. Like, we're talking like the better shows, like Resident Alien, or that was the studio that like what did they put together? Like any of the better TV shows is done by them. So it's they're not dumping it off with a cheaper company. Like they're taking it serious.
I mean, to see this finally get the anime treatment, because I remember there was talk about a Scott Pilgrim animated series for years, and it just never happened. And I remember Brian Lee O'Malley saying stuff on like Twitter or Facebook or something saying, well, the idea is still there. We're still kind of working on it. And for years in Canada and in online fandoms, you could not escape Scott Pilgrim. My best exposure with it and worst exposure with it.
It was almost annoying.
Yeah.
It had almost hit like, you know, when when Rick and Morty was hitting like the Pickle Rick era.
Yeah.
It was like Pickle Rick hit the point where it was almost getting annoying, and some people would argue that it already had. That's sort of where it hit here in Canada, where it was like, I liked the movie, but I never I didn't understand why it was at such a fever pitch.
Yeah, like when I first saw, well, allow me to explain my good exposure and bad exposure with Scott Pilgrim. So my best exposure is I went to a concert by Anna Managuchi, and they were performing the Scott Pilgrim soundtrack from the video game at a bar in Toronto. And that was honestly fucking fantastic. Had an amazing time. Bad exposure with the Scott Pilgrim franchise. So a former cast member of TWIG, once upon a time, was an extra on that movie. I didn't stop hearing about Scott Pilgrim for 3 fucking months. Now, nothing against this former cast member of Scott Pilgrim, but it kept finding its way into every single conversation, and it just reached maximum saturation, and I just got annoyed. And I read about 4 issues of the manga, or the first 4 volumes, and I was like, okay, this is fine. It's okay. I saw the movie, and because the experience was so colored from everything I heard, I didn't care for it. I didn't watch the movie again until 2018 when it got released on Blu-ray or something. And I enjoyed it then. And I actually bought the 4K version of it a couple years ago, and I enjoy it just fine. The fact that they got the original cast for this back, great, fantastic, awesome. I'm in.
It kind of says where some of these people's careers have gone. Not Chris Evans, but like, you know what I mean? It's like, what's Michael Cera been doing? Oh, nothing, so we can get him for dirt cheap.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad this exists. I hope it'll be as good as I want it to be. Although, when you were mentioning about reaching that level of annoying, a friend of mine on Facebook put it in a really interesting way, and I can't disagree with it. He's like, oh goody, now I get to listen to Scott Pilgrim fans be as annoying as Undertale fans were for a couple of years. And I can't disagree with that.
Well, what I never got was it just the fact that, oh my God, Canada's represented in something made by Canadians? Because it was very much a, oh my God, did you see that Pizza was in it?
Or, hey, there's like Honest Eds, or there's Sneaky D's, or they're talking about the Velvet Underground or whatever.
Or like there's Second Cup, and it's like, why wouldn't it be Timmy's?
Yeah, and
or like, but like again, it was very much South Park's whole thing they did on member berries. It's like, remember this, remember that, but it wasn't even that. It was just like, look, we're being represented, so we have to love it. And watching it, I was like, yeah, there's funny moments, and it's like, oh, there's Casaloma there, there's this and that, like there's references. I'm like, I get it, but is it okay? Am I old for saying this? That the style of comedy and the way the movie was created and everything is kind of out of that.
It's that era. It's definitely a time capsule.
I don't want to say AVGN era, but you know what I mean? It's of the internet gaming community era of the 2002 to 2009. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That decade produced a very distinct style of not meta humor, but just like a distinct style of internet comedy. And that's kind of what it is. And I feel like not just like that we've moved past it because we're older. I feel like if you look at it, it wasn't that funny at the time. We were just happy for representation.
I kind of wonder if you're right, because there was a joke and a meme I saw floating around on Twitter a couple days ago, and it's like, you couldn't make Scott Pilgrim today because most of the locations have been replaced by condos. And there's a famous shot of knives and Scott walking out of that pizza by Honest Ed's, and it's a condo now.
Well, not to mention, like, and I'm not going to be that guy where it's like it would be canceled. No, it's just is about an adult who's
Dating a high
dating,
school.
grooming an underage girl.
Yeah, it's
leading her on because he can.
yeah, it's just one of those things where I don't think it's gonna hit as well as you want it to. And
So, I mean, I'll give it a watch, but like, it's something that works better as a video game and as a book than then, well, obviously, like live action. It's interesting. I feel bad for Edgar Wright because it was what basically killed his Hollywood career or the trajectory of it. And there's a like, had it been successful and had it moved on, he probably wouldn't have been fired from Ant-Man. You know what I mean? Like, you can trace it, but I think it's a time capsule of the era. I don't think it's a timeless classic.
I don't know if I'd call it a timeless classic. Definitely a cult hit. It's one of those movies I'd be very interested to see with an audience now, just to see how it would hit. It's something I think I remember listening to the director's commentary, but I don't remember it.
The only thing as annoying as it, like I would say for Americans, is talk to anybody our age about how much they hated hearing Napoleon Dynamite nonstop.
Oh yeah, like my wife can't fucking stand them. Now, Alex, I'm going to send you a picture on Facebook right now, and I want to show you exactly what I'm talking about.
Is it? I was going to say, is it former TWIG personnel just talking nonstop about it?
No. This is the picture that I'm talking about. So you see where
with
Bluray and Bathurst at like that time.
Because the entire downtown is condos because they grew so much they had to grow and like they had to build up in the last 15 years.
Yeah,
and
so
they and not only that, the city grew so much that all the people left the city and they're now moving out here. They're like an hour's worth away.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the sequel to Scott Pilgrim takes place in like, I don't know, Vaughn or something. I don't know. It's
like, I mean, again, as a cartoon, I think it's going to work better.
Yeah,
but here's my question: who wants it?
You know what? I'm interested because if it's on Netflix, I'm paying for it anyway. But
like, is it not the biggest one-hit wonder of Canadian comics? Didn't he do like nothing else except guest spot and guest cover on things because he was a one and done creator?
Honestly, I can't answer that. That might be more of a JT question.
But okay, yeah. I mean, like, obviously, our friends will tell us, and I'm sorry if I sound really stupid. It's just for somebody who was being lauded as like, you know what I mean? How much praise he got at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the follow up?
Yeah, it's just.
And if it happened, why didn't it hit big? Like, that's why I'm saying I think it's a time capsule. It was vitally important to Canadian nerd culture for people born between 1980 and 1992.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for
and
sure.
like the early, like the first group of millennials.
Mm-hmm.
And like, because there's two cohorts. There's cohort 1, 80 to 90, and then 90 to 2000. And then after that, it's what Gen Z or whatever you call it, right? So it's like for the group of kids that were born in the 80s to early 90s in Canada, and then obviously, nerd culture in general, and video game culture, the people that grew up with that the pre AVGN internet nerd crowd that loved Newgrounds and what's it, E-Bombs World and everything like that, right before Web 2.0 was coming, that was sort of fitting right in with that culture. And I don't know if it works now, even as a cartoon, because is anybody going to get the references except the people that are grown up now and don't really care?
I don't know. I would be very curious to see how well it does, because you see when Netflix tries to adapt something close to the source material, but not exactly one for one, like the recent Cowboy Bebop series.
Yeah.
Some people loved it. I did, but most people didn't.
It'll come and go, and I think what's going to piss off the fans the most is there won't ever be a DVD or Blu-ray release of it, because Netflix never does that.
Yeah.
Like, the last time they did anything was special
Stranger
edition.
Things?
Yeah, and those were bare bones, just subtitles, no special features. The special features are on Netflix that you can't get on the limited edition $100 4K discs.
Huh, I didn't even know that.
That also did not have HDR. The only 4K releases not to, because they just didn't care. Like,
Wow.
and they have not. Netflix hasn't released a Blu-ray of anything since. So, like, for the super fans out there, what are they like? They can't even make money off them because they're not, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's an odd thing. If it was Amazon or anybody else, they'd say, okay, they're going to at least put out home video releases for the super fans. But, like, who's going to watch this more than once?
I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see and find out. I suppose whenever it comes out, we will get a review copy.
Exactly. And my question to any listener out there is, who wants to make bets on how long it takes when it comes out, before a group of Gen Z kids who never ever saw the original or read the books end up talking endlessly about how problematic some of it is online?
Probably. All right.
Conversations that they never thought would ever pop up.
I guess we'll find out. All right, so moving on to our next story, and this one, can't say I'm surprised. So this one comes courtesy of Kotaku.com. PSVR 2 headset sales sound like they're off to a really rough start. Analysts are already calling for Sony to slash the expensive price tag. A month after launch, some analysts are already raising a panic about PlayStation's VR 2 headset sales. Bloomberg reports that the PS5 accessories are projected to have sold less than 300,000 units in the first month, and renewing calls to slash the high-end $550 price tag. Don't ask how much this thing is in Canada.
Without the bundled game and without getting the charging station that you really need for the hand, like for the controllers, it comes out to $810 after tax Canadian. Yeah. So, and if you do the conversion, that's not $550 American. There is an additional. It costs more here than it should, because remember when they raised the price of the PS5 consoles during the shortage here for no reason, and then kept it lower in the States? They kept that lower price point for the PSVR 2 there. So we're paying a surcharge for effectively no reason.
Released on February 22nd, PSVR 2 is a high quality and comfortable headset with decent games that still struggle to justify the premium cost. In addition to the headset, users also need, as you mentioned, a PS5, which starts at around $400, plus the games themselves, like the $60 Horizon Call of the Mountain. Sony hasn't released official sales numbers yet, but estimates so far by some analysts are not reassured about the company's latest VR play. Research firm IDC told Bloomberg on March 29th it expects PSVR 2 to only sell 270,000 units in its first month, staggeringly less than the 2 million goal Bloomberg had previously reported, based on older requests to part suppliers, which Sony has called inaccurate. I suspect a price cut on the PSVR 2 will be needed to avoid a complete disaster of their new product, said Francisco Geronimo, or Geronimo? I don't know. I'm not sure. IDC's vice president of data and analytics. PSVR 2 launched at a weird time, with companies like Facebook owner Meta slashing its investment in the virtual reality market. It also doesn't yet really have a killer blockbuster game to help it win over skeptics and newcomers, and it's a hefty extra investment at a time when many players seem content to just get a PS5 and call it a day. Sony's console had its best sales month it's ever though in February. Then the article just kind of goes on.
Yeah, VR, like I have the I guess it's called the Meta Quest 2 now. It wasn't when I got it. It was still was it the Oculus Quest?
Yeah, the Oculus.
Now, and again, I haven't turned it on in a year, because the year and like last spring and summer, we had. Did I do any reviews then? Maybe I did right around then.
You did a couple, yeah.
I know I got it 2 years ago. And I barely touched it after the first year, because there was a lot of games coming out for it, and we were getting a lot of offers. The offers we're getting to review titles for it have turned into NFT games, and I just stopped. Or they were like, the stuff coming out now is really janky. The last big release, and like, usually I say don't quote me on it, but you can quote me on this. The last big release that I think was of any substance, that was not, I guess heavily subsidized or put in by Meta themselves. We didn't review it because I could have, but I was like too scared. Was Resident Evil 4, And Resident Evil 4, and that was, a port, obviously, and, slight change. And that was good from whatever all accounts. But I reviewed the Wraith game, from the World of Darkness.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really good. That was ambitious. That was scary, and it didn't have to be super jumpy. It was just very good. And then there was nothing. And there hasn't been anything. And a lot of that has to do with, I think, people holding back for when the PSVR 2 is going to come. And that's a jump in technology. And obviously with the Oculus, you can plug it into the computer and use it tethered to, if your computer's powerful enough, you can play games that the system itself can't play. So there's the options for that. I haven't turned it on. It probably needs updates. Because I haven't used it in so long, they keep sending me emails. Like, and this is Oculus themselves. This isn't through a press account or anything, saying, come back and we'll give you $14 of credit to just apply to your account as long as you use it within a month. They're so desperate to get people to come and play their games, they're giving $14 to anybody that doesn't play for over a month. And I keep getting those emails, and nothing has compelled me to go back because there's nothing. I have purchased every game I want to play on it, and between that and games we reviewed, there's like 20 games. And that's on the most accessible thing. And that's before they increased the price by $100 in Canada. And I have like the 64 gig version, which is not as big as, the 128's the minimum now. So like, it's fun, and you wanted to try it, but like, it's not wheelchair friendly.
Yeah, I'm interested in VR, but
you at one point you're like, I'll buy it off you, and like the reason I hesitated, Mike, was I didn't want to take your money and then you to find out that like you can't use it really in a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. It is, you are like, when I set up my surroundings in it, I'm usually standing or I'll sit down. It is intended to be played standing up, and I know that the PSVR is a little different. It might be a little different, but they're still primarily meant to be standing up and moving around. So they're like, I won't say that they're not accessible. I'll say that accessibility is always going to be a problem with VR, with the current way that things are done and the current way games are designed. So there's that. And this is a device that costs twice as much, and it apparently looks fantastic, but also requires like my system at least is all self-contained. Even if you don't have a computer to play the more advanced games, there's still plenty of good games. And like Beat Saber's fantastic. There's a lot of great stuff, and that's what I should really be turning it on to play. I should play that a few times a week, just for exercise. But the problem is, in Canada, you got to pay after taxes nearly $800 for the PlayStation since they increased the price, which is readily in stock everywhere, but nearly $800. And then, so you're going to pay $1,600 and you don't get any games to play VR2, if that's what your intention is. And then, like, we were initially offered, hey, would you guys like to review, some of these, like, I was offered Horizon, and I'm like, we don't have the hardware. We would love to review it. It's way out of our price bracket right now at the moment. Do you, like, and there wasn't like we had the option to even rent. Like, you can't even go rent hardware anymore, right? Anywhere. Used to be able to, you could go to Blockbuster or whatever, just rent the hardware if you had to do a review or something, and you didn't want to have the ownership of the hardware. There's not that. There's not a lot of outlets reviewing it because they know the vast majority of people can't afford it.
Well,
So
unless you're IGN, Kotaku, GameSpot, or one of the larger kind of YouTubers, it's too expensive. I mean,
like a YouTuber, like you have to, like if you're a streamer and you're making a pretty significant amount of money off of it, because remember, some people will be like, well, it's less than $1,000. It's an investment for your stream, or it's an investment for your video show or your podcast. That's still an expense that is a sunk cost. And not everybody has money just to throw around like that. And so, like, when we spend that kind of money on a console, we spend like $600 on a console. We know we're going to get several hundred games potentially to play for it. We know that we're going to be using them for the next 5 to 7 years. I think the fear of people, even larger YouTubers, purchasing it has been, are there only going to be like 3 good games? Nobody's announced anything that, like, there's Horizon, and then everything else is a port.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, where's the killer app? So it's worrisome, and it's like not me like ragging on it. It's just where I think a lot of people see this too, and this is my opinion. The next Nintendo system is within the next 12 to 16 months.
Yeah.
Do people want to spend $800 on a VR thing now when they know they're going to have to shell $500 to $600 up for Nintendo that they're going to play thousands of hours more on?
Oh yeah, like
or a PlayStation Slim if people are waiting for that, because the talk is they're making a slimmer down version, or somebody's like, you know what? Why don't somebody who maybe has a PlayStation and a Nintendo right now, and they would maybe consider getting it. They might be going, hey, wait a minute, my PC is not great or anything. I might get a Series X to play, PC ports or whatever. Like there are people out there that would rather have the three main consoles than just go, deep into VR, because VR is still very niche and it's not something that's going to be mainstream for high-end gaming for the next 10 to 20 years. The tech just isn't there.
Mm-hmm. Like, to me, it's a curiosity. I want to try VR, and I know there's VR cafes around me. Maybe I'll go there and try it.
That is something, if they're still open, if they're still doing VR cafes, that is something to try. I will bring my VR setup to your place at some point for you to try out. I know from my experience that it's not, for most games, the most conducive to somebody in a chair. It just isn't, which is weird. Like, they're all trying to avoid saying that, but like 90% of the games require that you have motion where you move your body around. Like, not just turning your head. Like, they're sort of expecting you turn your whole body to look at something. Try doing that in a manual wheelchair with your headset on and you can't see anything around you.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I mean, the games I want to try, Star Trek Bridge Commander, X-Wing, Rogue Squadron, or whatever. The fucking Star Wars flight game that came out a couple years ago.
Like there are certain experiences where it would be fantastic, but are any of those experiences AAA games worth the price tag?
No, not at this time. So let's talk about the big story this week. And this is something that, well, if you've been following this industry, this should come as absolutely zero surprise, but this was first reported by IGN, but been confirmed by multiple outlets. E3 2023 is canceled. E3 2023 has been canceled, as first reported by IGN. This follows multiple video game publishers and companies pulling out of the upcoming Electronic Entertainment Expo over the last few weeks. In a report published on March 30th, IGN said that two sources have confirmed to the outlet that the Entertainment Software Association, the organization behind E3, sent emails to ESA members announcing the cancellation. Reportedly in these emails, the ESA said that while E3 is, quote, a beloved event and brand, the upcoming 2023 Expo has simply not garnered enough, quote, sustained interest necessary to execute in a way that would showcase the size, strength, and the impact of our industry, end quote. The email ended with the ESA mentioning its continued commitment to advocacy work. Shortly after the IGN report was published, the official E3 Twitter account confirmed the news with the statement. ReedPop.
So is it ReedPop or whatever? Before you get into that, I didn't realize that the ESA hadn't been putting on their own show. Like, they hired an outside firm to do it. And it's like, I didn't know this because I'm not a convention goer, but I guess this company has a reputation. I don't know if it's good or bad, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, they do okay work. I think they're the ones behind the Stan Lee Expo and a few other big shows in the States.
But like, shouldn't they have hired whoever does Fan Expo or Comic-Con or somebody? Because it's the largest, or traditionally the largest, trade show for the industry in the West.
They should have hired the PAX guys. Flat out. You want a good show, you talk to the PAX guys. So the event that was, or the thing that was posted on Twitter, and then I'll read another official statement. ReedPop and the Entertainment Software Association have announced that both the digital and physical events for E3 2023 are canceled. ReedPop's Global VP of Gaming, Carl Marzen-Kish, released a statement. This was a difficult decision because of all the effect we and our partners put towards making this event happen, but we had to do what's right for the industry and what's right for E3. We appreciate and understand that interested companies wouldn't have had playable demos ready, and that the resources challenging made E3 at E3 this summer an obstacle they couldn't overcome. For those who did commit to E3 2023,
sorry, that's bullshit, because all these companies are doing their own showcases where they're showing demos anyway.
Yeah.
What they're saying is nobody wanted to commit to licensing a booth, paying to fly out on such short notice to then have open to the public, not just press, demos. they probably weren't ready for some of that stuff, but it irks me because you remember when they did the digital one in 2000 and was it 21?
Yeah.
Sign-ups for press credentials was in November, and then like December we got our credentials, and then the site didn't go active till like a week before, and it was a disaster. They couldn't even get that right now for a digital thing, which was still garbage. Even if it was the same thing, but it was a spot where we could like press a button to maybe book an online one-on-one talk. It's like, and then I started thinking like half of these companies around that time email us anyway. It's like, if you'd like to talk to so-and-so, we're setting up meetings. And for the most part, we haven't done it because we're not attending. But like, if these kind of trade shows go away, it might be something we start doing more and getting more offers to do. Because like the fact that these companies are, some of them waited till last minute to cancel or say they weren't going. And the fact that they canceled this, 9 weeks away, 8 weeks away, 9 weeks away, I think, from when it was coming out. Like the fact that they waited this long is ridiculous, because every major studio should have received a confirmation that they were going or not and paid in like October.
The fact, when I knew something was distinctively wrong, when you lose Ubisoft, you done fucked up, because they will go to everything.
It was like 2 days later that they canceled the show. I think what happened was Ubisoft was the last major studio that had committed. They said they're going to go as long as they run it. And what I think Ubisoft said to them was, who else has signed up?
Yep.
Because it better not be an empty show lot with just them, because then it looks bad on them for even showing up. And they said they're going to move forward with the Ubisoft Forward. Like the only people that we had discussed, in our group chats that had tentatively said that they had planned to sort of be there was not officially, but like that the only companies that hadn't confirmed they weren't going, that were large enough, that leads me to believe they were in the same boat as Ubisoft, were Capcom, Konami, and Square Enix, and Namco Bandai. Had they got them, it would have been enough to run a smaller show, because then you'd fill up all the other spaces with the indie people. But the fact that none of them, they were all mum on it, and this is a very large year for Square Enix, and they said nothing. They haven't even announced a digital showcase. I have a feeling they planned on going, and then when they saw this, that's why they didn't announce anything, because Final Fantasy is launching a week or two later. On top of that, the talk is it's entirely possible Final Fantasy VII actually makes it for Christmas instead of in March or April like people were thinking. This might, and again, it's rumors, but it might actually be a double Final Fantasy year. It'd be crazy, because what would that do for the Game Awards?
Yeah, pretty much.
But not just that, like there's talk of other games from them, and then there was all this talk of Konami having multiple big things to show in June. Now, some of these companies might partner with other people, like Square has enough, they can run their own show. Because you remember the E3 that they announced, they finally had footage of Final Fantasy before the Game Awards that year, where they finally showed everything off. They actually had a whole theater booked, and they did a full E3 showcase. They hadn't done that in years. They have enough now to do that again. So they might do their own showcase thingy. And again, these might end up falling under the umbrella of like Summer Game Fest, right? But like this, yeah. Sorry to go that I went off on my tangent, but it's bugging me that I found out that a lot of other reviewers and podcasts and never even got word back as to whether they had digital credentials for this year's show. It's like, what were they doing?
Honestly, like, I remember once upon a time when I used to be really excited about E3 and the possibility of going, and I had plans to go at several different points. The opportunity just never came up. And when I think about the amount of PAXs I've been to, I went to 3 years worth of PAX East. I've done trade shows. I've done Fan Expo. I've done like
Microsoft experiences.
Yeah.
You went to those.
Oh yeah, like tons of those. Those were more like, they're fun, they're intimate. Sometimes I learn some stuff, sometimes I'm working as press. But it just seemed to me at some point, I I would see certain YouTubers and other personalities just go to these things and just, I don't know whether it's just me getting old or jaded at the industry that I've worked with for so long. Just like, oh, goody, I get to listen to a week long of people saying, look who I ran into. Or, like, it's different when it's PR folks saying that stuff to me.
Yeah, when it's not been planned for months ahead between streamers.
Yeah, like,
no,
it's irritating.
I can tell you what so trade show, prior to E3, it would usually show up at CES, and then what was the toy show they did in Toronto back in the 80s and 90s? There was a toy show they did there, and they would show a lot of the stuff, and then like whatever they showed there at the trade show would then show up at the CNE, at the Canadian National Exhibition, for the public to play. They had like a giant hangar that eventually turned into a car show, where they would have all the newest video games, like set up the same booths, everything. It's just no booth babes or whatever, and no big ads. Like all the stuff set up for new video games, all the new arcade games, and every kid could go to play for free. And you got I think you got 3 minutes on each arcade machine and 5 minutes on every console game. You'd wait in line. I did that multiple years in the early 90s to like 95, 96, 97, when they stopped doing the showcase there, and everything became E3 in North America. And E3 initially, for the first 6 years or so, was a pure trade show, like traditional trade show, only press, closed doors. They could film whatever they wanted, but a lot of the stuff was usually like, it was stuff you wouldn't show on TV, or even on the on the early web TV stuff, because it was mostly financial numbers. Here's how many things we've sold. Here's what our projections are. We're looking for partners to make controllers to bundle with our games, and then you'd have people like literally doing bidding meetings to figure out who's gonna market what, and like it was a business trade show. And then they'd have some customer facing stuff. Basically, the only press that showed up there outside of like business press people, like for like business magazines and that sort of stuff, was the magazines. The magazines would go there because that's where they could get some good pictures and stuff. And it was a very press only focused and business only focused thing. And then sometime, what was it, like around the year like 99, 2000, is when they started going nuts, where they bring in like celebrities like Mr. T and like Tony Hawk, and they'd build like a half pipe, or they would do things like big celebrity stunt type stuff. And that was it wasn't for the public. Like, yes, it was sort of open to the public, but it wasn't really, it wasn't an E3 for all where it went like fully public, where anybody could go. But like prior to that, it was press stuff. But the idea was the trade show was there to be a spectacle, to pull people in, and they were willing to pay money, because that's when the internet opened up, and you had like G4. Like, what propelled E3 to be this like mecca of gaming, you can pinpoint it to being the rise of G4.
Yeah, G4,
G4 Tech TV in Canada,
Electric Playground covered it a lot too.
Electric Playground, the Space Channel here, Sci-Fi. They would anything that was tech oriented. It was the rise of cable television, like the specialty channel, but very specifically G4. And the G4 era, when that G4 went, we all know what happened to G4 now, right? But like that, it was a capture at a time when they were getting money because the stuff was being shown on TV. And when everything moved to streaming, they weren't going to get the same advertising. Even though more eyes were technically on them, they didn't update with the times. And then when they went to E3 for everybody and everything, and it became overcrowded and too much, and that's right around the same time that all these corporations started snatching up all the small developers. So you had less variety, less random stuff happening, and they started cheaping out by not having the spectacle type stuff. You weren't seeing the major celebrities showing up for a paid gig or anything to impress a bunch of nerdy press people, right? So it had slowly degraded, till like it became this homogenized like trade show that wasn't really a trade show. It was just basically pure commercials and not even fun anymore. In the last like 4 or 5 years it was running. And it's at the point now where everybody that I see that is a colleague of ours or in the same industry, they're much more interested, if they're going to do a traditional trade, like, is to go to Gamescom in Germany. Gamescom is basically what E3 was from like 98 to 2010 ish or so, and it still stayed like that, and it's an even bigger show overall, and I don't see that culture of the way it does changing anytime soon. It might actually become much more prominent and important. Like, we have Summer Games Fest, but I think that as far as a collective trade show and game show, I think that, well, TGS is going to stay the same forever because Japan is tradition. They're never going to stop it. But it's going to be TGS, Gamescom, and then whatever people do sometime in June if they're still going to keep doing it.
I honestly prefer the digital format. I don't have to leave my house. It's easier to parse stuff. There's no travel expenses. I don't have to be endlessly irritating with selfies.
Well, and again, my question to anybody who's actually upset, like legitimately upset at the loss of it, I ask, what have you lost?
Yeah, because you get the same experience with Nintendo Direct. You're getting the information. You just don't get to sit in the LA Convention Center with thousands of other people to stand in lines for 2 hours to play something for 15 minutes, because the only good stuff you ever saw was behind closed doors.
Well, yeah, the public were never going to get access to the stuff that they thought they were going to.
Yeah.
Ever. And I mean, you get some swag bags and that kind of stuff. It's like, you know what? You can go to PAX, you can go to MagFest, you can go to these ones where they're geared towards you, and some developers will have fun stuff there for you to do. You can go to EVO and fighting competition stuff. You can do all that sort of stuff. But it's like, if the people holding E3 in their head is like the big mecca, I think have hyped, like some people that have gone, like if you're a local in LA and you were constantly going, you know, it was sort of just like their version of us going to the CNE every summer. If you wanted to go, you know, to the exhibition, it's like it became a local thing. I get that, but like the people that worship it that never went and are lamenting the fact that they'll never be able to go, you might want to question, you know, were your thoughts behind wanting to go genuine, or how much of it was tied up in what you imagined the experience would have been like from watching news coverage of it 20 years ago?
Because like the last big stunt that I remember, there are 3 E3 things that I can think of that stayed as memes, or not necessarily meme, but memorable moments for me. When you went to the LA theater and everybody who attended the Microsoft conference one year got an Xbox One. Okay, that's not cheap, but you know that list was curated.
Well, yeah. Like, you weren't going to be invited, Mike.
Oh God, no. Actually, I was invited, but I couldn't go because I couldn't get a flight. But
why do you think I mentioned that, just to piss you off?
Well, no, it's not so much that, because then it's not about what you're talking about. No. Then it's a stunt, and I don't like that.
And I guess it doesn't matter because you ended up with like 30 copies of Blue Dragon anyway.
Yeah, so yeah, but at the same time, like, that's a stunt. That's not like, that's gimmicky, and I don't like that. Like, the coverage should speak for itself. But the also, next thing that I remember,
if you had to give out a couple hundred or even a couple thousand, actually several thousand, depending on the Microsoft Theater, a couple thousand.
I think it was like 500 at that conference.
At that conference, you had to give out 500 of your brand new console to people. That says a lot about your confidence or the lack thereof in the console because of your bad PR.
Yeah. Now, like I said, if my memory's wrong on that, but I don't think I am.
I know that at one point, I think it was the DS was being given out by Nintendo, but it had already sold like 40 million units or whatever, right? Like, it was already a big thing, and it was more like hey, we're celebrating this for those of us here, for those of you here, here's something. Because I mean, they were a dime a dozen for them. They made money on the hardware, right?
Yeah.
So, and at handhelds and that, like, it kind of makes sense. I know that at one point Sony was giving out PSPs. Like, it was not a raffle draw, but it was basically like everybody who sits down, you know, here's your assigned seat number, and they randomly pulled like a bunch of winners as they walked out.
Yeah,
and it's like that sort of thing, and that happens at a lot of trade shows. But the fact that they gave them out to everybody, because chalk that up to Don Matrick saying something stupid.
Another thing that I remember, and it's not so much a good memory, but it was something whenever Todd Howard would come out from Bethesda, he'd come out and say, and somebody would heckle from the audience, and he'd heckle back, and all right, fine, whatever.
Oh, you mean when he'd come out and everybody that was paid to clap and cheer would clap and cheer?
The other thing that I remember, and this was more of a funny thing, I get it, but it's sort of like you don't need celebrity to come out and do this, is when Keanu Reeves was talking about Cyberpunk and someone yelled, "You're breathtaking," and then Keanu just fired back, "No, you're breathtaking."
That was the last good E3.
Yeah, and that's it.
That
like
was what,
everything.
That was what, 2018, or was that
maybe 2019 or 2020, something like that? Recent memory.
It was 2018 because that was, I think, the last year that Sony was there.
Yeah, and it just everything else is, I don't know. It's been like there's been a couple of cool moments here and there, and some people may say sour grapes. Maybe I'm just old. I don't know.
No, it was not. It was on the trajectory to fall apart regardless.
Mm-hmm.
This just was the catalyst.
Yeah, like
and like we sometimes people, and we'll even do it, sometimes we'll joke or we'll give Jeff grief for some of his stuff, but when he came out and said that something needs to change with him, like this is before the pandemic even hit, and he said he's not going to be there, and he, for the last several years before that, had basically been the only mainstream coverage that would show up on regular TV, and he's like, he basically was saying they're running it like shit and it's going nowhere and they're not innovating and they don't plan to. It was like people sort of scoffed at it and thought it was just a tiff he had with them. It was pretty clear he saw that they were being mismanaged for a long time. I mean, he had been covering them since like 95, and he's like, yeah, they're basically falling apart. So it was no surprise that when that happened and they hired new people to run it, and then those people are so inept. Like, here's my question. What's it called? Pop something or other, the company that runs it?
Reed Pop, yeah.
Reed Pop? Yeah. Are they going to go bankrupt after this because of how much they've botched it several years in a row?
I don't know.
Who's ever going to hire them to run their con ever again? Any con?
I don't think it's that big a deal because it is E3, but there's also other big shows. There's like
multiple years in a row and you can't run it? Something that had run for over 20 years and you were told to take over and you still can't run it. Something that had worked, according to them, just fine until the pandemic hit, and they can't organize it. That tells me that the industry doesn't even respect it or want it.
I think you've kind of hit there. I just think the industry's been moving away from these big events for quite some time. Like, I don't know.
Except Gamescom. Gamescom is going to be there because of the unique nature of how the European Union works. Because you've got all these different... It's not like... Even though E3 is supposed to be for everybody in the English-speaking world, it's basically an American/Canadian showcase. It is where all the Western devs and everybody would show up, but very specifically American, and then they pull in a lot of the Canadian devs because most of the American studios have their stuff being made up in Canada because it's cheaper. So it's the American showcase, whereas Gamescom is like 30 different countries where people speak different languages, and it's the one place where they can be united to then market and sell their stuff. It's the way E3 used to be. And it's just due to the fact that they're dealing with very different geographic conditions, it makes sense that they're going to run like that. And TGS is going to run because TGS is always going to run.
Yeah, like it's just kind of the way things are. I mean, June, don't worry, folks. I'm sure we'll cover each and everything. Yeah. And this year I'm actually going to participate, and maybe I'll be a little bit more excited because it's not just going to be everything crammed into one little bit. It's going to be...
No, well, here's what I don't want. I don't want everybody to do the same thing, do everything on 1 or 2 days.
Yeah, no.
I don't mind a week and a half of having some things spread out. I don't mind that. Do not do what they did the last several years where I have to watch stuff all summer.
Yeah, I don't want to be following... Yeah, like, I don't want to follow games news for multiple days over the course of, like, multiple hours.
Maximum 2 weeks of June if you spread out your stuff over the course of, like, let's say you start on a Wednesday and it goes to the following Friday with different people doing things. I'm okay with that. And then I don't have to watch anything until Gamescom.
Yeah.
And Gamescom, I just watch the opening night live with Jeff because it's usually the only good stuff. And then we can read the summaries at the very end. That's all I care about. And then I don't want anything else. because I have a feeling that Gamescom is going to have whatever maybe wasn't ready for June, or they didn't think was going to be ready for June, is probably going to show up at Gamescom, because it's an actual showcase that's watched by millions of people still. So it'll be interesting. And don't worry, Mike, I'll get the schedules of when things are going to air, because think about it right now. There's going to be something from Nintendo, because they're going to have to announce whatever they're going to have for the Christmas season, right? Because like Zelda will have already been out for a month.
Yeah, so we got Zelda.
Yeah, there's nothing else scheduled, right? And then Sony hasn't had a full-fledged, and I'm not saying state of play, they haven't had a full-fledged PlayStation experience in 2.5 years. So are we, like, the talk is we should be getting one. Like, they have like, you can't trickle the information out the way that they've been doing and appease their shareholders. They do have to have something with meat on it. So there's that. They've already confirmed Xbox is having a full-blown one. They're doing a full-blown E3 showcase, like, on their own in their theater. And then you've got I think a couple days before, I think Xbox is like 3 or 4 days after Jeff Keighley's show. So there's at least one weekend where there's going to be stuff for us to watch. And then it's like, I don't want Ubisoft. I don't want EA. I don't want them to go, we've got something in July. No. You put it close to the others, please. Because otherwise we just won't care about your showcase. And
so
that's pretty much the end of my opinions on it. Give it to me in a week and a half, or don't give it to me at all.
Yeah, ultimately, I just want the information spread out. I don't want to be overwhelmed. I want to be able to digest, give constructive feedback.
By spread out, you mean you don't want it the way that you used to have it, where it's 3 showcases a day.
I don't want a fucking fire hose of just gaming crap.
Yeah, like one a day over the course of a week, and we can handle that.
Yeah, exactly. Just give it to me piecemeal. I can understand it. I can digest it, and we can then give proper analysis. We'll see. So anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this edition of the Nerd News this week. Coming up, I don't know what else is going to be putting here, so I guess I'll find out. So we'll be back, guys, right after this, only on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Our friends over at Paramount Home Video sent a review copy of the South Park Complete 25th Season set. I'd say set, but it's actually just a single disc edition, because there are 6 episodes in the season that aired on television in beginning of 2022. And we're sort of getting used to having these shorter seasons. I don't know. Some of it obviously was pandemic induced, and then the rest is maybe because they're doing more of the TV movie / special stuff that they've had popping up on Paramount Plus. But both last year's and this year's seasons were on the shorter end of less than 10 episodes. But as long as they're high quality episodes, that's all that really matters. Now, so this is a single disc that comes in a Blu-ray single Amaray case with a cardboard slipcover that matches the artwork. There's not like there's a different artwork on the actual cover art versus the case, and that's fine for what it is here. I'll say this off the bat, I'm kind of surprised for a 25th anniversary of the show that, other than having a little indicator on the front, 25th, and it sort of looks like it's a coin or like an award or like a seal you'd put on. There's not any special features, and I was really hoping that for a 25th anniversary, even if not entirely for this season alone, that there'd be something involved. But I'll get it out of the way. There's no special features. There's not even commentary tracks on here. It's really bare bones, like as bare bones as what you'd see from like a manufacturer on demand disc. And I hope they don't get to that level where it has to be that, because South Park has been a staple of home video now for quite some time, and I would think that the audience is wide enough to want to be released, in a major pressing every single time. But yeah, that's my only real gripe with it. This was one of the funnier seasons in recent memory. If for anybody to refresh their memory, the episodes are Pajama Day, The Big Fix, City People, Back to the Cold War, which had to do with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which was brand spanking new at that point. Help My Teenager Hates Me, that's the Airsoft episode, and Credigree Weed St. Patrick's Day special, and that's how it ended the season. Pretty much all solid throughout. Don't need to go over them individually as they were pretty heavily covered at the time. The transfer is pretty much fantastic. The only way this could be really any better is if it was in a 4K release or something, but you're getting pristine video quality at 1080p, no aliasing or banding or anything weird with the encodes, better quality than when it aired on television or streaming. Audio wise, same deal, 5.1. A lot of people still watch it. If you watch it online streaming, sometimes like from their website, it's in stereo. And then when it's broadcast on TV, it's usually surround sound but censored. These are the uncensored versions in true HD, surround sound. It's the highest quality you're going to get. The sound's solid. Not a ton of audio separation, a lot of stuff being front and sub heavy, but that's the kind of show that it is. But obviously music and incidental things happen, in the front left and front right. Not a ton of back channel stuff, but the episodes weren't really super dynamic calling for that. So, I can't really hold that against it. Everything is on a 25 gig single layer disc, but that's all it's really needed because the show's animation style is computer generated and super clean. So 6, episodes on a 25 gig disc is plenty of breathing room. You could probably put 10, 15 episodes of this kind of show without losing any quality whatsoever or even having to go to a dual layer. So it uses its space wisely. It's solid. If you're a fan of the show, you'll probably want to pick it up, especially if you watched it on TV where it was censored initially in the States. Up here in Canada, when it airs on TV, it airs uncensored, so it's not as dramatic a difference on the audio front. It's just the video front that's a lot better. Again, only thing detracting from it is that there's the lack of any special features or commentaries or anything like that, which I was really hoping they would do here. But again, we don't know if they're going to do something later on with the franchise that way, or if there'll be, another release or maybe more box sets or things coming. But as it stands, it's priced reasonable. MSRP of $24. You probably are going to find it a little cheaper on Amazon or, at Walmart, places like that where they're going to carry it. That's probably on the upper end of what I would personally think it's worth, considering it's pretty bare bones. But it is nice to have, so you don't have to be connected to the net to watch. You can just pop it in your player, watch in high quality. And I guess you could say it's an advantage that it's only, like, they didn't decide to split the episodes up onto multiple discs. You can watch the whole season pretty much in one sitting. So, yay for that. Good for collectors. Not great for anybody that has wanting for extensive special features that you used to find on the earlier seasons of South Park. I hope they return to that, but as it stands here, it's a solid single disc, if bare bones release.
Go crazy?
Don't mind if I do!
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria!
And welcome back to ThisWeekInGeek.net. I'm your host, Mike the Birdman. All right, well, it's time to talk about the strange, the unusual things that happened around the planet this past week. It's April Fool's Day, so typically we'd have weird news that happened. I don't know, maybe somebody got married to a fish. Or maybe, I don't know, the giant animatronic rat at Chuck E. Cheese is freaked out. But no, it's April Fool's.
Freaked out and turned and said, murder children or something.
So we have gathered, I'm just going to read you what like some of the headlines are from some of these things, because if you want to go find these out, you can go look around the internet and find
basically, them. You know how everybody and their mother put out fake ads or things. Back in the day, it was, remember, Pornhub became Cornhub, and every video was replaced by videos of farmers and corn, which I still think is hilarious and one of the most brilliant things ever.
See, that's funny.
Or when corporations do funny pranks. I remember ThinkGeek back in the day putting out fake products that eventually got voted upon to become real products. So it's multiple websites collect and summarize the best and worst of the April Fool's ads. And we thought, you know what, for weird news, why don't we just get a couple of those lists and briefly go over some of them that, whether or not, get our opinions, whether or not they're any good.
So one of the first ones, this comes from the WashingtonPost.com, so not hard to find. This one I actually think would sell remarkably well. It comes from HyperX, and it's the Cup Mix In, and it is a pair of headphones that have a cup of noodles and a fork as its microphone. This is actually kind of cool. If this was seriously like $100, I'd drop $100 on that. It looks kind of neat. So I'm just going to read you the post and then I'll read out a couple of choice versions here. So today is April Fool's Day, aka the Day of Lies, because the Washington Post is a newspaper and the news is opposite of a lie. Our writers have a tradition of dumping on the holiday, particularly on corporate marketing specialists who use the occasion to deceive their customers with fictitious announcements in the name of, quote, humor. Wow, we seem to share this sentiment. As a public service, we are debunking every brand or celebrity-related April prank we can find today in hopes that no one is tricked against their will. Please read and commit to memory. George Takei has not been cast in an Everything Everywhere All at Once sequel called Nothing Nowhere Not at All. Actually, that would be kind of a fun name for a sequel.
Sounds like something the Zuckers would do as like, was it Epic Movie, all those parodies?
Yeah, see, that would actually be kind of clever. Tinder is not banning photos of singles holding fish. Pennsylvania is not sawing off New Jersey so it can have a shoreline.
Although they probably should.
The Columbus, Ohio Public Library does not have a large boat filled with books that goes up and down a river. Let's see. Stubrew is not entering the granola business with the closest thing you can find to eating compost for breakfast. The Pittsburgh Steelers have not signed Calvin Brodus Jr., aka Snoop Dogg, to play wide receiver. The Chicago Botanical Garden has not installed a smart garden with, quote, emergent plants. So think The Last of Us. Let me see. Archaeologists have not unearthed a book of dad jokes from ancient Rome called Liber Platovanus, or Shame on You, basically, I guess it's Latin for dad jokes. The Panera bread bowl hot tub is not real. Ocean Spray is not introducing a jellied cranberry sauce condiment packet, although
you know what? That one I think would be a funny prank to actually make the product.
True Car is not introducing an AR carbine technology called Car GPT. Lego, let me see, what's another one? Oh, the XFL's St. Louis Battlehawks aren't moving to Los Angeles like the Rams did once upon a time. And let's see, what's another fine one? Oh, you can't buy zip-on skis. You cannot buy square cheese things from Baby Bell. You can't buy a shirt with a special pocket for pizza slices, although I have seen that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that actually does exist.
Amtrak trains do not have a new loud car. Delaware is not building a 100...
Loud car. You mean, I thought they already did. It was just any Amtrak that goes through New York or New Jersey.
And the final one, I think this is kind of funny. Delaware is not building a 100-foot statue of Aubrey Plaza's character from Parks and Recreation.
They probably should.
See, I think for a character like that, that would kind of be funny. Although I'm still waiting to go to Detroit to go visit the RoboCop statue.
I was going to say, wouldn't it have been more funny if they're removing the RoboCop statue to put one up of her?
Or maybe, I don't know, I'm trying to think where could be Mega City 1 and we put up a statue of Judge Dredd.
The head of the RoboCop statue has been replaced with a head bust of Grumpy Cat.
And then Alex, you found this one. This comes courtesy of Kotaku.com.
They summarized a bunch too, related more to gaming, and I was like, that's kind of neat.
So here are the best and worst April Fool's jokes in gaming for 2023. April's Fool's Day has come to add a little bit more chaos to the week as jokes and lies fly around unrestricted. But we understand what April 1st is all about, a chance for developers to sneak in some humor in our favorite games. These April Fool's jokes are getting more and more advanced and ambitious by the years, and we love April for that. Here are some of the best April Fool's jokes currently out there. Lechonk lovers unite. Here are two true statements. Lechonk is a perfect Pokemon, and Lechonk deserves more love than we can offer. So while there's an underlying pain that Lechonk can only dominate Pokemon on holiday meant for jokes, I'm still happy to report that Lechonk will get the stardom it deserves on this April 1st. True Lechonk fans will treat themselves to an extra chunky plush or a porky pink playmat decked out with Lechonks, and you can get this on the official Pokemon Center. Kind of cool. Nintendo Switch Online will now sound more Italian. Nintendo is adding the voice actors from the Super Mario Bros. Movie to some of its biggest games through Nintendo Switch Online, with the option to have Chris Pratt's voice in the original Mario Brothers. Jack Black Bowser
is the joke that it's more Italian in quotes because he's talking? It's a Mia Mario.
Let me see. There's one featuring Exhibit. Levels Up Pimp My Ride. Opera GX, a self-proclaimed browser for gamers, and I suppose allowing users to mod their browser, take that sentiment to the next level. The one and only Exhibit is here to show you how to pimp out your Opera GX setup with the new aesthetic digs like a cyberpunk theme or a more broad anime theme.
That's actually kind of funny. I was hoping you were going to say Exhibit is voicing Mario from now on.
See, that I would be down with.
Yo, dog, it's a Mia Mario.
Let me see. Another one that I like.
Have him pimp out their carts.
Oh God. This next one I like. Assassinate a cuddly teddy bear in Rainbow Six Siege. Rainbow Six Siege likes to celebrate April Fools with a Rainbow is Magic event. While normally Rainbow Six Siege does not display much in the form of rainbows, April Fools allows the tactical shooter to add some color to its universe. Unfortunately, the pacifists are not welcome this time. As opposed to rescuing teddy bears, you'll have to blow their heads off instead. 1v1 your cat in Street Fighter 6. Capcom is on a roll with its innovative Street Fighter 6 features. Not only will there be a new 2v2 mode, but also a dynamic mode that allows you to perform stylish combos and attach with the simple press of a button for further accessibility with your cat. Capcom has created a tool that lets your cat experience dynamic mode, converting the various swats and jabs of a cat into button presses. If you ever
see
that anyway.
The way the title sounded, I thought they were going to say they used a webcam to digitize your cat so you can fight your cat in the game.
See, wouldn't that be interesting? I actually, the one who would play the most out of Beaker and Dutch would probably be Beaker, although the most annoying one to fight would be Ayla because she would constantly taunt.
Yes, she'd be playing as Dan the whole time.
While Sonic the Hedgehog
and still be so good she can beat you.
While Sonic the Hedgehog is murdered, the egg coin currency crashes. It appears to be a stressful time of year for Sonic the Hedgehog and friends. While everyone's favorite blue hedgehog was killed off for a free murder mystery game, there were some darker, more illicit underpinnings brewing in the Sonicverse. Apparently, Eggman has created a cryptocurrency known as Egg Coin that has crashed and burned, and Big the Cat, the surprising leader of a mafia crew, among other shocking headlines. Thoughts and prayers.
And somewhere out there, the new CEO of Square Enix called up Sega and said, "Hey, can we get in on that?"
Let me see. And then those are all the pretty there's one for Rocket League where you guess have giant Easter eggs.
Like it wasn't overly big this year, I noticed, for gaming. Like I don't think there was anything in GTA Online, was there?
Not that I saw, but I also haven't played GTA Online in like months.
If there isn't a sign that they're winding down and getting ready for the next game, that should be it right there, because you know, that still, or was still, one of the biggest communities was last year around this time still. So, yeah, I mean, it's cool, but you notice how this year it was kind of tame. I think people maybe got the hint that the last 3 years of pandemic, people don't want to get their hopes up for cool things if they, you know, when it comes to April Fools, only to have the rug pulled out from underneath them.
Mm-hmm.
So there wasn't anything big. I was hoping there'd be more stuff from like Wendy's. Like,
yeah. I remember that role-playing game they put out a couple of years ago. That was pretty clever.
And remember KFC put out the
romance dating game or whatever?
The dating sim.
See, again, that's clever and funny.
And then wasn't it a few years back starring Mario Lopez, they made a Lifetime like romance telenovela movie?
Yeah, see, when April Fools go,
like that was cool back in the day when they were doing stuff like that.
Yeah, like it all depends on how you approach it, how much time and effort you want to put into it. That's pretty clever. Like, I'm glad we've kind of moved past ish with the idea of Nintendo's announcing a Legend of Zelda movie. Here's the first poster.
Yeah.
Like, okay, for about 5 seconds, that'll get somebody.
Yeah, like I think we've moved past the overly hokey and the overly believable to find the sort of they sort of skirt it now. They don't want to lead people on, because I think what they're afraid of now is how reactionary shareholders are nowadays. That if something gets announced that looks too real and then isn't, it can actually affect their stock prices like it never used to. So that's something I think companies are keeping in mind.
Yeah. So ultimately, one thing I will say before we close out this segment, which is, like I said, just kind of short this week, I do miss the ThinkGeek stuff, because I used to be a very big shopper on ThinkGeek. And I had thousands of points that I blew out right as the website was ending and its stores were closing.
Yeah.
I got a lot of cool shit from there.
Wasn't like the last big April Fool's joke toy right around when, was it Rick and Morty season 1 or 2 came out and they did the Plumbus?
Or it was the Portal Gun or something weird.
I think it was Portal Gun and the Plumbus, like, which is the weird looking, vaguely sexual organ that they had on the intergalactic cable. And they advertised one and then they made it. And it was like, ew, okay. And then I think that's right when, weren't they bought by like GameStop or something?
Something like that.
They disappeared. And they just like disappeared.
Yeah, pretty much. They got absorbed. Their stuff was liquidated and it was gone. I know there was something I bought from there that was incredibly useful to my life, but I can't remember what it was. But I remember
were they the ones that made the sonic screwdriver?
No, that was a company called Underground Toys, but they sold it. There was another there was something I bought in there, and I used to use it all the time because it was really useful. Although the best thing that they ever sold was this tiny universal remote control that could be attached to a keychain.
Oh, it was like a mini Harmony remote. Yeah. I remember that.
Let me tell you, I was a holy tear in every restaurant and bar for about 2.5 years.
Because if you cycle, you could, in your bare hands, it was the size of a Tamagotchi, you could cycle through every code and turn a TV off.
Yep. And I could change the channel. My favorite time, and then we should end the show. I used to go into bars sometimes, and this, you're going to label me as that jerk. I'd like to remind you, I was a very dumb person about between whatever sporting event was on and the news. And just that's it. Just like
that's Tim. I knew a guy that used to do it, but he would switch it to TLN. Was it the
Learning Network?
No, that's the TLC. TLN was like half Spanish, half Italian. Soap opera channel that was like in between TLC and like A&E and all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
So you'd have these guys watching the sports stuff, and then they would switch it. They'd be like, "Turn off the fucking Italian shit."
Oh yeah, and I again, when people started kind of getting wise to it, then I would stop and wait for about 15-20 minutes, and it would just happen again.
Hey, every time that fat guy shows up, the TV doesn't work.
Although now with your phones, there are apps that can do it, or if you know how to take advantage of Bluetooth and Wi-Fi.
If you can get on the Wi-Fi. Now, not very many phones come with IR blasters in them anymore. So I think Samsung stopped doing that in the Notes. But for a while, if your phone had an IR blaster, you could look like you were chatting with your friends, and you could be fucking up everybody's television within a certain radius.
Oh yeah, I used to be a technological tear. Now, obviously, I don't do that anymore.
It would have been more funny if you turned it on to what's it called?
Teletoon Retro and
not retro. What's the really Treehouse?
Yes.
It would have been have somebody yell, "I don't want to fucking watch Caillou. I want to watch the game." have them lose their minds.
Yeah, I want to watch the UFC, not Blue's Clues. But yeah, so
I would have paid good money to hear somebody just lose their mind and scream, "I don't want to watch Paw Patrol." the goddamn, like, and if you really screw with them, it's like March Madness is on, or it's like the Stanley Cup Finals are on. I don't want to watch it. This is people losing their shit. Although then you start affecting the actual bar's business, and you don't necessarily want to do that.
Exactly. That's why I'm like, you know what? It's funny for 5 minutes.
Unless it's an East Side Mario's or an Olive Garden, then fuck with it all you want.
So yeah, that was me once upon a time, probably about 10 or 15 years ago. So rip thinking. Oh, I was. I like to think I've grown up a lot since then. So all it took was me getting into my 30s.
You say that, but you know you would do it again in a heartbeat if you had one of those remotes.
I don't want people to get mad at me.
No, it would be for social punishment. It would be like you have mistreated me. Now watch me switch your TV and change the parental lock.
Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this edition of the Weird News this week. We got one more review coming up from Alex, and then we're going to wrap up the show. We'll talk to you guys right after this.
Our friends over at NISAmerica sent a review copy of GrimGrimoire OnceMore for the PlayStation 4/5. And I played it on my PS5 for review, and I was one of the people that didn't play it initially. I had friends that were into it back in the day when it came out, and I just wasn't into the style at the time of game, being like an RTS, a weird RTS hybrid. And I think I'm just more into like quirky, weird things now than I was at the time. I was pretty straightforward back in the day. I was a platformer fan. I was an RPG fan, and then a little bit of shooters on the side, and that was it. I didn't really, go and deviate from that at all for any reason, as money was tight. And then it's funny because it's the kind of game that would have had a limited print run, and then if I wanted to play it, would have been hard to get. But, for anybody that's played it in the past, know that the major changes here have been to some, graphical tweaks and improvements for stability and performance, all across the board. Even like from what I hear, the Switch version, I've seen a couple gameplay videos of that, and it seems to perform quite well. And it's available on pretty much every platform out there. So, like, it's on Switch, PS4, PS5, both retail and digital for each of those. So, like, between them, it's not a case of the Switch, lagging. It's something that's powerful enough to run it just fine. I obviously played it on pretty much the best platform you could play it on. And in touching it and playing both versions of the PS4 and PS5, there's really no difference. They both are roughly the same file size. They load in roughly the same time. I guess there might be an advantage to having native code for the PS5 version, but I can't see it. So you're not missing out if you're playing it on PS4, really. Now, the story structure where it loops around and goes, that is fun if you like that style of gameplay. I'm sort of on the fence about it. I enjoyed my time with this, but I can see how some people might not. So this is, again, it's the concept of the game is going to be something that you might struggle with. And if you don't know, I would suggest, watching a trailer or two about it. But it's, you are spinning around the levels and then running real-time RTS style elements within it. It is very unique for the time. Other games have done and sort of copied it now. But this was still pretty unique when it came out, back in the day. And they've done some tweaks to the interface and combat to make it feel a little more modern than, what I remember contemporary reviews at the time being of the title. And I even had to go back and watch a few because I was like, again, not having played the original, I was like, how much did they actually change? And from the looks of things, it's a moderate change. It's not like they completely changed gameplay loop or anything. They've just made it a little more accessible and a little more intuitive in the hands when you're playing it now. It has a pretty good story. I'm not going to spoil any of it because it's a fairly story heavy game. The character designs and concepts and just the overall aesthetic are what stand out and what stood out back in the day, and even more so obviously in HD now. If I had any complaints beyond just, again, the concept of how this gameplay story loop it works and the gameplay loop works, not everybody's going to be a super big fan. A lot of the maps are repetitive, and most of the levels are similar strategies to beat, so there's not an overly abundant variety in gameplay style and gameplay across multiple levels. It's sort of, not one and done, but like, here's a few strategies and you're going to use them for pretty much the whole game. If you like that, fantastic. If you play a little bit and you don't, you'll know pretty much right away. We don't give games, for the most part, a numbered score, but this is one of those games where if you really like it, you're going to really like it, and if you don't like it, you're going to hate it. So it's not a middling game in any sense of, can I recommend it for people? I would recommend at least watching some gameplay of it, maybe a trailer or two, watch your favorite YouTuber or streamer, play a tiny bit of it. If it looks like something that will appeal to you, you're probably really going to enjoy it. Otherwise, I would say, you if you're on the fence, wait until you see a discount or a sale digitally to check it out. But I think for those of you that were fans of the original or fans of their games in the past, you're probably ready to go pick it up, and I don't think you're going to be disappointed. It's not plagued by any technical glitches or issues that would be actually pretty much at all. It just seems to run buttery smooth on at least PS4/PS5. So if you were worried about it being a poor port, do worry not. It's actually very well made.
All right, guys, that's the kind of show it has been here on ThisWeekInGeek.net. Coming up on the site, we are going to be recording some more loose cannons, some more Future Imperfects coming up this month, as I am just beginning to wrap up school. So we will have Enrique to talk about Prehysteria and Theodore Rex on Loose Cannon. We're going to be talking about Star Trek Picard as that series comes to an end later on this month. I know we're going to be talking about The Mandalorian as that also comes to an end fairly soon as well. We are going to be doing a prototype on The Last of Us. I just want to marathon the series one more time through and kind of give my thoughts on that. Basically, long story short, I think it's fantastic, and the changes that were made, not too bad, but I do want to give it a watch with a second, more critical eye. So we'll be doing that. In terms of game reviews, I do have a D&D book that I have to look through. I have some stuff from the Dune role-playing game from Modifius. I did get in touch with one RPG publisher that I'm hoping to cover some more stuff. Hopefully I'll get some more stuff for those games that I want to talk about. I got some stuff from Gale Force 9 I still have to work through. In terms of video games, as of this recording, it is WrestleMania weekend, so I do have to work on WW 2K23, so I'm probably going to start that later on this week. So whoever wins tonight at WrestleMania, well, it's not Logan Paul, so I don't give a shit.
I can tell you, I ended up catching up on day one. It's the most decent WrestleMania in the last 4 or 5 years. Nothing exceptional. Like, a lot of people think it's the best one in years, and it's like, that's not a hard measure to hit. So far, it's been good, but it's pretty clear the bigger stuff is happening as of this recording tonight. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah,
I'm not a fan of splitting it into two shows. Ends up being 8 hours of wrestling, not including pre-shows.
Yeah, it's
too much.
Long. Yeah,
it's
way too much.
It needs to be 3.5 hours of the best. And if you're not the best, you shouldn't be on the show.
Yeah, it's long, it's exhausting. So anyway, guys, we will have a lot more stuff up on the site this week. So yeah, not a whole lot to really say in the extra this week. Just hopefully guys,
like, as far as what's coming up, like neither of us, I think, has been given any outside of WWE. There's not really anything major games to work on. There's some indie stuff that's come in, but like there isn't. You'll notice there's not a ton of stuff. Even
not until late month.
Yeah, like
Star Wars.
The 14th has the Mega Man Battle Network Legacy. I don't know if we're covering that, or if we do, it might be on our own.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's nothing really like. I'm looking forward to Advance Wars. It's coming out on the 21st. Haven't heard back yet whether we're reviewing it. We should be, but like again, that's 3 weeks away or more. And then beyond that, for the rest of the month, I think we might be doing Trinity Trigger, or I might be doing that.
I might get Star Wars. I've asked for it. We'll see.
And that's confirmed for the end of the month. That's right. So, like, really, as far as big titles, there's maybe 1, maybe 2 for the entire month.
Yeah. So
and then next month is where it starts to get crammed with like Redfall, and then Zelda, and then beyond that, there's like some indie titles. Lord of the Rings Gollum, who knows if that's even coming or if they're going to push that again. And then, outside of that, again, indie titles. And then before we know it, it's June where it's insane. We're going to be busy. And I keep thinking to myself, like, outside of Final Fantasy having a firm date, could everything else kind of just move down the line a little bit into the summer?
Yeah.
To give us some breathing room.
My cat is on my table and I don't like it. Dutch, can you not? So that is my cue to end the show. So hopefully you guys will have a fan. Oh. Thanks, Dutch. I'm really glad you did that. Thanks a lot, Cat. So anyway,
he's a good boy. Be nice.
He's a very good boy. So anyway, so from all of us here at TWIG, myself, Alex, Dutch, Beaker, Ayla, and everybody else here at TWIG, Ken and JT and Aaron, we hope you guys have a fantastic week ahead. We'll talk to you guys next week. So for This Week in Geek, we have been
Alex, the producer.
I've been Mike the Birdman saying, Cat, please get off the goddamn table. Until then, be excellent to each other, guys. We'll catch you guys again next time right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.